I first wrote the cloud security maturity model a few years ago, and actually I can't remember the dates, and we updated it about a year or so ago. That was drawing on lessons that I've learned over 15 or more years of working in cloud and working with enterprises in cloud. And when that started, when I first started talking about cloud, I said, we're in the midst of a 10 to 20 year global data center transformation project. Well, we're about 15 years into that now. And I think maybe it's more of a 20 to 30 year transformation. So we're going to break this into two parts. First, if we look at where is cloud adoption? I mean, as far as I can tell, 100% of organizations have something they're doing in cloud. It might be software as a service or some aspect of infrastructure as a service. But by some estimates, with one cloud provider I've worked with, I don't have permission, so I can't name them, their estimate is about only 20% of enterprise workloads have actually moved up to cloud. We still have a lot in the data center. And I see this when I'm out there working with the maturity model and working with organizations. So if we think about this as a bell curve, I'd say the vast majority of organizations are, if we have the 1 to 5 on the maturity model, where 1 is the organization exists and can spell cloud. I mean, that's all you need to do to get a 1. And then 5 being that you're like the unicorns. You're like these very, cloud first, cloud native companies. I'd say the majority of organizations, talking more to large and mid-sized enterprises, are really still at that 2 to 3 level. There are absolutely pockets of maturity. There's some organizations more 3 to 4, but those were some of the earlier adopters. And really most organizations are still in that kind of 2 to 3 where they're figuring it out, they're adjusting their processes. And then internally, they might have like a project over here that's a 3 to a 4, and a project over here that might be a 4. But they still have a couple of those other ones that are hanging them back. Now, why is this? I think one of the biggest reasons, there's 2. One is that cloud does force governance changes. There's something I call the grand unified theory of cloud governance. And the idea behind that is, in our data center, why is cloud so challenging to governance? Well, in our data centers, the security and governance are defined by scarcity. There's only so many servers and so many wires and so much floor space to put things. But in cloud, we don't have that. So teams can build their own infrastructure with just a credit card. They don't have to go ask permission and have somebody set up servers for them. So it's decentralized operations. But the management of that, the administration, is unified into these single APIs and web endpoints, Azure and Amazon and Google. And that's on the internet and often protected just a username and password. And then the resources you put up in cloud can be publicly exposed. So this is a whole different way of governing and managing, because you want to give teams that independence, but you still need to have guardrails so that they don't create misconfigurations, exposures that are instantly public, or they lose their credentials and bad guys can control the entire data center instead of maybe just breaking into the one server. I mean, those are really legitimately hard challenges. So there's that piece of it. The second is, one is the organizations do have to recognize they can't govern cloud and manage it the same way they've done their data centers. That is just not going to work. The second is the skills and staffing. It's much better than it was. When I first started, I probably knew everybody doing cloud security assessments on a first name basis. I mean, now every company does it, all the tooling, it's the entire market, entire conferences dedicated to the topic. When everybody said we were crazy in the early days for, you're going to waste your career if you go on cloud. The problem is it takes a long time for people to learn new skills. And it takes a long time if that person already works for you and already has job duties and you're just adding cloud on top of what they're already doing. To put this in perspective, I first started writing to Amazon APIs, over 15 years ago at this point. Yeah, about 15 years ago. I feel pretty comfortable that I understand AWS, but I always run into pockets, I always make mistakes. And I am sometimes writing code almost every day or in AWS every day. Azure, I know the fundamentals. I can keep myself out of trouble. I can help orgs a bit with things, but then I have to call Azure expert friends because I need help at a certain point. And GCP, Google, I don't even know how to spell it. So That's like, I've been dedicated to doing nothing else for 15 years and I can barely keep my head over, and I certainly can't do multi-cloud. And yet I go into organizations and they have their people on their network teams and their workload teams and their other teams. And they're like, cool, you guys now have to secure all 3 clouds. So that's a problem. And so I think that's why we struggle with that maturity. It's the adapting our organizational governance, who controls what, who's responsible for what, building in those processes and tools, and then making sure that we've invested in our people, that they not only have the skills in this, and we have adequate staffing, which we don't typically, but that they have the time to focus on what they need to focus on.